All right, welcome back. You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. Of course, the biggest news at this time is the breaking news. Nigeria's headline inflation rate remains unchanged at 9.2%. Another breaking news at this time, well, it's not really a breaking news story, but it is actually trending, is a major shakeup at the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, the NNPC. Mouthful for me there. But we're talking about that on the energy market report, you know, with Bosun Business News Editor. Bosun Omofai is back, is locked and loaded and ready to roll. Bosun, so interesting times at the NNPC. I remember when we talked about it on Monday, the restructuring of the NNPC, hopes rising. A lot of people had kind of mixed feelings with regards to what was actually happening at the NNPC.
I wish we could just bring you what's on the social media right now. About an hour ago, the news went on. I tried to put a few of that out there, and you'll be amazed at what the reactions had been over the last 1 hour or 1.5 hours, as it were. Nigerians are very much interested in what happens, what are the intentions of President Muhammadu Buhari at this time? Why is he rattling the NNPC as we speak right now? That's the biggest story. And of course, the number of folks who are, look, perhaps this hasn't gone deep enough in terms of restructuring the National Oil Corporation.
How further deep should he go?
How much further or rattling? What folks are looking for, the NNPC is the Federal Republic of Nigeria, give or take, and I give that. Once you talk about NNPC, all ears are up on all sides, and everybody wants to know, because that is the engine of this economy since 1976, when the NNPC was set up. But the current president, Harriet, is the man you call Nigeria's oil president. Remember, he was appointed as a minister called commissioner, then federal commissioner, by the then head of state, General Olusegun Obasanjo, in 1976, when he came into office after the assassination of Murtala Mohammed. And he was there as head of the NNPC for 2 years, 76 to 78. Then Obasanjo's tenure ended in 1979. So for 2 years, President Buhari was there at the NNPC. That was at the early years of that organization. So he understands the birth of the NNPC as an organization. Then he had an opportunity to deal with the oil industry as well during the Petroleum Trust Fund in 1998. That's when the then head of state, the late head of state, General Sani Abacha, created the Petroleum Trust Fund to aggregate the excess crude oil prices and use it for some social infrastructure. So President Buhari has an eye in the oil industry. He has an idea of what is going on in that industry. And I think he's beginning to shake up that organization. Harriet, let's start from the top, as it were. I got 15 minutes to wrap this up. Dolapo is joining us, head of energy research at EcoBank Development Corporation. But folks, let's start as usual this round. Welcome back, everyone. So I shouldn't forget to say that, folks. But we're always on media, on social media together, so I'm not sure we miss much of each other. This is where some of the stocks, since the last time I was here on the show, a few things have changed. I've seen the price of 40 oil moved on from around 197 naira to on the, and I must say, to the dollar. What's the problem? Currency really these days? 40 oil back to 204, again, because 40 oil has released these numbers for the first half of 2015, and those numbers meant some market expectations. So you see 40 oil climbing back to that price level. Yesterday, second trading day of the week, that's about 48 cover there, almost on the back of 200, about 200,000 units. Then you have Mobil Oil also around this figure, but flat on the day. MRS still hanging in there. There's still a slight change here in MRS from 48 to 49, but that was flat, unchanged and untradeable on Tuesday. Move on and look at Oando. This is quite a little bit disappointing as well, since I left here about 2 weeks ago. This has since changed from 12.2 from about 13, 14, 15, now at 12.20. Oando is yet to release its full year 2014 numbers. Don't forget that. But volume is still there, very strong, almost 15 million on Tuesday. Total is sticking around this figure, 150, 153 on the counters, and the volume very small there. Those who hold Total hardly put them on the street for sale. So, in case you're one of them. Seplat is also back from the days of those numbers that were released for the Petroleum Exploration Company a few weeks ago, when those numbers came very disappointing, about almost 50% down in what Seplat reported for his quarterly earnings, now back at 300 naira per share. And corn oil off almost 10% on Tuesday at 33.28. Now, have a look at a snapshot of that sector for you. That includes a few other small cap companies that is not on our radar for coverage. This is what it looks like. The daily index return is about about 0.5% in the red. Year to date, about 13.3%, tracking the entire or the broader market, if you call it composite index. Price to earnings around 8.0. That's lower than the market EPS average of 9.4 times, and dividend yield, of course, there we need to get more numbers. Now let's get to where we talk about the rattling of the NNPC. President Buhari is the first civilian CEO to rattle these organizations. Some folks don't agree with me that to his foundations yet, but the restructuring of the NNPC. This is what the president has done in summary for you. Now he fires all the CEOs or managing directors of all the subsidiaries, including DPR and the pipeline production, PPMC and the rest of them. All the CEOs are gone. Then he trims the number of executive seats from 8 to 4. And that's because the number of directories in the NNPC has been shrunk from 8 just to 4. And that's quite significant. Now, these are the 4 new directories for the NNPC. The exploration and production, that is the directorate that will deal with production and be dealing with the JVCs and what have you. The finance and services is very, very crucial to the NNPC, talking about the numbers there, finance and services. Then you have the refining and technology. That was where you find the 4 refineries for you. Then you have the commercial investment part of it. Those are the 4 new refineries we'll have time today, in the days ahead down the week, to break this down for you with our expert here on the program. Now, look at what's more the president also did. Sacked 38 top management staffers. That's quite significant. That's bringing the total of those top heavy guys in NNPC from 122 to 83. Well, perhaps this is where some folks want more haircuts, I don't know, but we'll keep an eye on that. Now, the president also made some significant pronouncements. Now he's allowing the NNPC to recruit or to employ 12, I don't know why, this is 12 disciples, but these will be guys from professionals from the private sector, that's the organized private sector, so qualified people from the private sector to join the top management cadre of the NNPC. Now this is quite significant. Now why would the president want 12 new guys from the private sector to be in the top echelon of the NNPC? The reason is so simple. The president wants the NNPC to run a new business model. He wants the NNPC to change from being a civil service organization into a private sector-led one. Now, that's bringing new blood into the NNPC. Now, let's talk to Dolapo Oni, who is the head energy research at EcoBank Development Corporation. Dolapo, thank you very much and good morning to you.
Good morning, Bolton.
Okay, I'm sure you following this story closely, perhaps more than I do, because this is your portfolio.
I have been following it.
Okay, now let's start from the bottom. Why is the president doing this clean, heavy shaking in the NNPC?
Well, I think Bolton, the reasons are quite apparent to us. There's so much. NNPC is at the core of the Nigerian economy when it comes to how much we make from selling our oil and how much we need the government to run the budget and the economy. So it's quite up to that. But over the last few years, especially since 2010, when we have seen oil prices rise, we've actually not even gained as much revenue from the oil sector as we should have, as we have seen in other OPEC countries or other oil-producing countries. And most of that inefficiency, according to several audits and reports, is really in the NNPC. So the NNPC will be a focus for the government for quite a while.
Well, but do you think this rattling that we've seen right now on the board behind me is deep enough? Some folks are on social media and says perhaps this is not significant enough. What's your reading, your understanding of where President Buhari is going with what he's doing?
You know, Bolton, I mean, just to be very candid, if you ask me to put it on a scale of 1 to 10 of what has been done so far, I'd say we're still somewhere around 1.5 points on a scale of to where we should be, where we are going. And this is really because we started to see some changes from the top. And there's about 3 major areas here that the president will need to really tackle the NNPC. Number one is the personnel, and that's what we've started to see. After we tackle the personnel, I guess the next thing should be the processes, because the NNPC conducts also domestic crude allocation, crude for oil swaps, and so many other things that the NNPC does will have to also be tackled. Proper processes will have to be put in place.
I didn't realize you weren't one of those who sharing my optimism this morning. I was thinking we're not just doing 1.5. We're on the scale of 1 to 10, we're just around 3 or 4 points. Now you say we're still around single digit in terms of what should be done in NPC. Now, if you look at what the president says should be done, bringing private sector individuals, 12 of them, onto the top management cadre of the NNPC to realign the business model of the National Oil Corporation. Don't you think this is significant enough pushing things forward?
Yeah, I think it's quite significant, and I really applaud that particular decision to bring in that number of private sector people. It's quite important to NNPC to get that, out-of-box thinking or, private sector thinking to really make things work, because I expect the private sector professionals to bring that quality private entrepreneurs we typically have to make sure that the business is maximized for profit and cost is minimized as well. So that's going to be very key, especially for the NNPC, where we have a lot of issues with how expenses are conducted and all that. But more importantly, I still expect that even with the board of the NNPC is reconstituted, private sector should also play a part there. That would also be very crucial, and it's similar to practices we see in other national oil companies around the world.
Okay, now, now in terms of moving forward, the 12 guys will be appointed. The new head of the NNPC is a private sector individual coming from ExxonMobil. So it's suspected that he will bring folks that he thinks would turning NNPC from a civil servant organization into a private sector one. Is there a likelihood that this new set of guys won't be contaminated by the remainder of folks there in the NNPC? Would they be contaminated? Is there any likelihood that they will not be contaminated by the processes and other things left in the NNPC?
Exactly. That's why I still rank it around 1.5, because this is what I'm saying, that, we just started to see the changes. The personnel changes that we're seeing currently still have to go down deeper. We're talking about NNPC here. This is an organization that has almost about 24,000 employees, and most of the changes we're seeing now are really at the top level. We have to go all the way down.
You don't say.
We were talking about the fact that the 113 vessels that were banned from lifting crude oil in Nigeria. We talked about the fact that, of course, there's officials at the port that have to ensure that these vessels declare the right figures and all that. So the changes have to go all the way down to the personnel on fields, checking the flow meters, ensuring that the actual crude amounts are recorded, all the way down to, even people monitoring to ensure that
the pipelines
stations are actually selling at the right price, exactly, and then the pipelines are also well monitored. So the changes that have to go all the way down. And then after the changes to personnel, you also have to put the kind of processes and checks and balances in place to ensure that even the acts of corruption can be checked by the processes themselves. Because there will be enough transparency and information on processes and operations.
Dolapo, we will have to cut it there. Thank you very much. We appreciate that for that enlightenment. Thank you. It looks like this numbers out of 24,000 looks like a scratch on the surface. But of course, at least this surface is being scratched at least a little bit deeper. Harriet, you smiling about the scratching?
It's really interesting, to know that.
Well, because people say corruption starts at the top, isn't it?
On a ranking of 1 to 10, we've just scratched about 1.5. That's really, really low.
So by the time we get to number 10, I got to kind of look at my fingernails, Harriet. If I have those kind of long fingernails, you ladies, some ladies do have. Perhaps the president needs a longer one to scratch deep. But you know how the proverb goes in Yoruba, part of one of the tribes in Nigeria, that the hands that a rat has, or a mice, is what he uses to scratch his body. So the president will use what he has to get what he wants.
Well, thank you, Bosun. Stick around, Bosun. And, of course, you too can stick around, because coming up In just a moment, we'll be focusing on the state of the nation. We'll be looking at the Nigeria Investment Promotion Drive.